Imagine no scientists tell you, and you yourself in a desert.
You would know that if you drop something, it would, but you wouldn't know how that happened.
You know there is a force that's driving it down.
Yes, you experience.
You don't see that force,
From experience.
but you see the effect.
Yeah.
You don't need to be a Newton. Newton is the one who formulated it,
Yes.
but it doesn't mean no one else can understand that.
Yes.
So we can see the effects of this force that I can't see, and then you say, I'm certain there's something doing that. Now you can.
Yeah, there's certainly something doing that, but when it comes to interpreting it, different people may have different interpretations
You can say,
of what is causing that.
But you can
Therefore,
say,
that's the level
fine,
of faith.
But the certainty that there is a thing there that's pulling it down. That's the level of certainty. You didn't say, oh, I assume. It's quite obvious. So when, for example, I mean, look at there's lots of ways you can have certainty. You can have inductive reasoning, deductive.
Yeah, I understand it.
Imagine now there's a room, okay? No windows.
Yep.
It's a concealed everywhere. One door. Everything. The floor is sealed. The walls are sealed. The ceilings are sealed. Excuse me. No escape. The only way to go in and out is by this one door. 4 people went inside. 3 people came out. Would you have certainty who's left inside?
So again, one person's left in there.
Okay. Say, for the sake of convenience, like Abdullah, Abdul Khaliq, Abdul Malik, Abdul Sabur, Abdul Shakur.
Yeah.
3 of them came.
Yeah.
Abdul Khaliq, Abdul Malik, Abdul Sabur. Would you be certain who's left inside?
Nice to meet you, man.
Would you have certainty who's left inside?
Sorry, so again, so 4
people went inside, 3 came out.
I'd have certainty that one,
But you haven't seen him coming out.
From experience, I would expect one to come out because I don't know. Many
You know, 4 people went there.
That would eat the other person maybe, and that could be There's no walls. There's no doors. There's just walls.
Yeah, if they don't eat, for example, they went in and came out straight away.
Yeah.
Would you have a level of certainty who's inside?
Yeah.
What is that process of certainty?
But it could be wrong. I would admit that it could be wrong.
How can it be wrong?
That's the possibility. Because there may not be.
May not be what?
There may not be.
No, 4 people went. 4 people went, 3 people came out.
Yeah.
That's the only way to go in and out.
Yeah, but if there was no possibility to explain how the other person could have come out, then you could.
I'm saying
there could be. They could. Chop him
one
up and
person
put him
is
in
left.
there,
Would you be certain who's left?
Yeah, I'll be certain that there was one person.
Yeah. What gives you that certainty?
From my experience, that usually 3 people.
So
go,
you're using.
4 people go in.
So as you realise, certainty can come from various forms of our.
I'm not debating that at all.
Yeah, good.
I believe my faith.
So,
I believe my religion, my faith, and I believe.
So when we say we have certainty, it is not certainty based on blind faith.
Yeah, I understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
but
faith,
the way the guy was saying it was that there is no way that he could be wrong, and that's where I was saying.
But I'm saying
no, there is
the level of certainty on this issue is like the level of certainty that you have in this room, where.
Yeah, for you.
So are you saying 3 of them came and you're still doubtful who's inside?
No, you can't really compare that as an example to.
Why not?
Because I'm there seeing them go in.
Yes.
So
likewise,
this is talking about something that happened
1400 years ago, you have a living tradition of transmitting of the Quran. Yeah. Heart to heart, word to word. That's how you see
them. Because then I could start saying, did you see them write it, and did you see Muhammad tell it to them, and they wrote it down, and then you go into all that. My whole point was that you cannot say that you have a 100%. You can say it, but it's not true. And for any religion, there is that element of faith that has to take you that extra bit. You can have evidence, 100%, strong evidence. You can have etc. But there's that element of faith that takes you that further. And I think also what that does for me anyway is it gives me a little bit of humility. That maybe there are areas maybe I can belong. It also gives me a bit of humility in the terms that I can actually learn things from other people and etc. Whilst I believe I have an assurance of faith, and there are evidences, etc. I also accept that there are certain things that I may be wrong, and I won't find out until I get there.
The process of eliminating errors and doubt in this certainty is quite robust. So we're talking about a community of Muslims. Some of them were even fighting each other.
Yeah.
Like the example that you heard.
Yeah, the Shiite, Sunni
Yeah.
Shiite. Is it Shiites?
What happened? They still had the same Quran.
Yeah.
They transmitted
Yeah.
the same Quran.
Yeah.
Every single moment of history, a large body of community
Yeah.
who had the Quran transmitted the Quran to us.
Yeah.
So this level of transmission gives us this reasonable faith, which I say is certainty. I cannot have a room for a doubt saying, oh, maybe there is an error. Because the process of this transmission was to this degree what we call mutawatir. Multiple mass transmission by this earliest generations from day one to today, and it's been transmitting still onwards.
I understand.
So if there was a change to happen, the opposing faction will have corrected them or raised an issue. But the fact that we have so many different factions within the Islamic body in history, and yet they transmitted the same Quran, is a living evidence of the purity of the pristine Quran and its preservation in its transmission.
Yeah,
So-
I would say that. I would say.
Yeah.
Say
That's
I don't know,
why-
take the Vedas or something. I would say in terms of authenticity and I'm not going to say certainty. This would have a stronger case. There'd be more evidence to prove historically there was a person, Muhammad.
So that's one point.
But but my whole point is, you're saying certainty. I'm saying there has to be a level of faith.
Okay, sure.
And
I'm not
there is a
saying there's no
possibility
faith.
of being
No.
wrong.
Don't get me wrong.
And that's it.
I
I'm
did
not
not
saying
say.
you're
I did not
wrong.
say
You could
there
be
is no
right.
level of
I could be
faith.
wrong.
I did not say it's faith. No, there is no level of faith. There is faith,
Yes.
but this faith is reasonable, rooted,
Yes,
and
okay,
based
okay.
on solid evidence. My second point, after talking about the transmission, if
Well,
had
we can
this
stop the
Quran,
conversation because that's the conversation I was having. The guy was saying, no, faith. No. We know this is. I cannot be wrong. He said.
No. Yes. Why you can't be wrong? This is where it comes in. My second point. If the Quran had been not transmitted exactly as the Prophet transmitted it,
Yeah.
then people should be able to point out the corruption within it and able to match the Quran. Because the Quran says if this Quran wasn't from God, from Allah, then you'd be able to bring a chapter like it or a Quran like it or 10 chapters like it, right? So any corruption would have rendered it easy to match the Quran.
Yeah.
Because if the divine text
Yeah.
is such a way guarded against any imitation because of the structure of the language, of the eloquence, of the meaning, of the grammar, of the way it's delivered, any corruption of that would render it what? Weak, and a hole pointed inside, and you can say I can match something like that. The fact that over 1500 years almost people are failing and have failed is a living evidence that the Quran is exactly how it was given to the Prophet and transmitted such was. The words of God as the Prophet claimed.
Not once did I say I don't think there's a possibility that
Yeah.
came.
So that's the level of
My
certainty in our faith.
My whole argument was the fact that there are various sects who interpret it in different ways, to me shows that although this is perfect, you cannot say that my particular sect 100% has it correct and right,
You're talking about interpretation.
because as human beings,
No, I
Yeah,
agree
interpretation,
with
that's
you.
the main thing.
I agree with you. There are many various groups of people who differently interpret
if I
it.
said there's a possibility that my interpretation may be wrong, I would have been okay, fine.
Sure.
Because I can accept that in my
What I,
interpretation, even of Christianity,
no,
I've seen,
I
I've seen
agree
Christians in
with
other
you to
groups-
this point
Yeah.
that
Yes.
people can interpret differently and have interpreted differently. But we should go
You're
for.
right,
But we
your
should
way
go
is
for.
right.
Now here's my caveat.
Sorry.
We should go for the best interpretation. There's many interpretations people can make depending on their level of understanding of the text. But there is a best interpretation of the text. Yeah? There are interpretations and there are best interpretations. We should all try to get the best interpretation. That's my position. That's the position of every Muslim should be. That the Quran should not be interpreted according to your own whims and desires. You shouldn't interpret the Quran because you know what? You believe that you are a rationalist. So you can't believe in the unseen angels, or you can't believe in the jinns. And you say, you know what? The jinns are like microbes that go inside your body and give you disease. No, you can't do that. You have to interpret according to the best interpretation. Allah says which is the best interpretation. So how did the Quran interpret it?
You'd say angels and that are,
they are not
descriptions
microbes.
of angels are, that's how they are. That's an image.
The
of what
angels
they
are described in the Quran.
It's literal.
And it's described by the Prophet.
Yeah.
They're not microbes.
No, no, no.
So
I don't believe that.
no. So what I'm saying is, just give you an arbitrary example. There are people who actually said something like this. Not angels, jinns. Shaitan, Shaitan is like a microbe. You know, that causing you disease and making you to do these things. Some rationalists is to do that. But that is going against the clear text of the scripture, the Quran, and the explanation by the Prophet. Okay? So the best interpretation is what we should follow, not what I think the interpretation should be. Okay? So the safest position is following the best interpretation, isn't it? So our position is, yes, people have interpreted, like some of the Sufis interpret it, oh, it means this. Oh, you have to do this, do that. No connection to the text whatsoever. No connection. If you read this text and they say it means this, you'll be saying, where do you get that from? You say, oh, I have my understanding. But you'll say, your interpretation is not in line with the best interpretation. Yeah. So, my friend, now to come to the Quran in a nutshell. I know you are a rational person and you understand at least the process of the transmission of the Quran and the process of preservation of the Quran. This Quran, think about it. If it wasn't from God and it came to this person, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have to have a rational explanation of what this Quran is if it's not from God. Yeah? If you don't accept it is from God, we have to have a rational explanation to justify our belief why it's not from God. Yeah? So, we need to be quite open, using our mind with a framework in which we do a very good assessment of that. How do we justify rationally? Yeah? Without bringing our baggage of prejudice, hatred or bigotry. Some people may have this hatred of the Quran because it's in Arabic language, they don't like Arabic language. Or because the Prophet was an Arab and they're not Arabs. So our own subjective understanding can be barriers in accepting the Quran. We want to leave these all aside. We want to say no. If the Quran is from God as a guidance to us, I want to accept it or reject it if it's not. So how am I going to be able to do that without bringing any biases? Yeah. So the Quran says this Quran is such that it cannot be produced by anything else other than God. It makes a claim. And it also not only makes a claim, it gives you and offers you falsifiability, falsification tests to prove it that it's not from God. Because it's quite understanding that if a book is not from God and talks about so many different things of the past, present and the future, talks about nations in the past, what they believed, where they went wrong, talks about the cosmos, how the cosmos works, it talks about your own inner self, what you think, what you don't think. These will be some examples, right? So many things.
Some of those things are general.
No, I'm saying it talks about a wide variety of things. If it wasn't from God, you would expect to have many discrepancies, contradictions, and errors, because that's what human mind is able to produce a book of this nature. A book, if it was a book of only 2 lines, then you can say, okay, the possibility of making an error there is very, very less. But if you have a book over 600 pages, actually this is even more, right? Talking about so many different things, talking about even predicting things to come in the future, talking about histories that people didn't even know then, that may people know in the future afterwards. The possibility of making errors is quite high. Why is it that when we examine this Quran and we apply this falsifiability, this falsification test, it stands up in the scrutiny?
I think it could be inspired by unseen. Well, I don't see any point. I don't see any reason not to think that. But my whole point was then when it comes to the interpretation of it,
No, look.
I think.
How
why,
can
why
you
can
interpret?
you not just have that? Like you said, it can interpret itself. So why does someone need the hadith to interpret it? If this, as Muhammad gave this. Muhammad gave this. That's what he gave.
And he explained it.
He gave that.
And he explained
therefore, then you can.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
No, but the hadith, it's like Abu Bakari and these guys. They've then explained it and told you the story.
No. So you have a fundamental
you
have a fundamental misunderstanding of the hadith. Bukhari and Muslim did all, other characters of the hadith. They didn't write it from their own mind what the Prophet said. They're collectors and transmitters.
I was calling you because of that thing. You said, prove me 5 pillars of Islam in Quran. So he was not getting the right answer. So I was waiting
do you know
for you
what? What's your name?
Mansur.
Mansur, nice to speak to you. I need to
No.
shoot. Yeah, bless you.
Are you going to come and visit Speaker's Corner again? If you do, we can carry on this conversation.
Yeah, although I said to
Yeah.
we're just going to go and listen. But
Do you have a copy of the Quran at home?
I have one, yeah. I've got a couple.
Carry on
I
reading.
don't know what translations I have. But
As many translations you like, choose to broaden the understanding of the meaning. Yeah? And we talk again. Take care.
So they were discussing about like 5